Your phone buzzes. You look. Nothing important. You look again 10 minutes later anyway. This happens 40, 80, sometimes over 100 times a day. You know it's not making you happier. You do it anyway. But the real answer for why is far stranger than willpower or bad habits. Your brain was not built for notifications. It was built for something much older. Something that kept your ancestors alive on a savanna where the difference between checking and not checking could mean the difference between eating and starving. Start with a question. Why does checking feel good, even when the thing you find is boring? A weather update. A meme you've already seen. An email that could have waited. There's a mismatch here. The action feels urgent. The reward is almost always small. That mismatch has a name in neuroscience. It comes from the work of Wolfram Schultz, a neurophysiologist who spent years recording the activity of dopamine neurons in monkeys. He expected dopamine to spike when the monkeys received a reward, like a squirt of juice. It did. But something odder showed up in the data. Once the monkeys learned that a cue predicted the juice, the dopamine spike moved. It stopped firing at the reward. It started firing at the anticipation. Dopamine, it turns out, is not a pleasure chemical. It is a prediction chemical. It fires hardest not when you get something good, but when you don't know if you're about to. Hold that thought because it explains almost everything about your phone. Your ancestors lived in an information-scarce world. Food, danger, and opportunity were unevenly scattered across the landscape. A patch of berries here, a predator's tracks there. The humans who survived were the ones whose brains rewarded checking. Checking the tree line, checking the riverbank, checking whether that rustling sound in the grass meant something was hunting them, or something they could hunt. This is sometimes called foraging behavior, and it wasn't limited to food. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer societies noticed that humans forage for information the same way they forage for calories. Scan, sample, decide whether to keep looking or move on. The psychologist George Miller once described humans as informivores, organisms that hunger for information the way other animals hunger for meat. Your phone did not invent this hunger. It found it already sitting inside you, fully formed, tuned by hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. Then it built a feeding mechanism more efficient than anything a Pleistocene landscape could offer. Here's where the story gets uncomfortable. In the 1950s, a psychologist named B.F. Skinner ran an experiment with pigeons and a lever. Press the lever, sometimes get food, not every time, randomly. Skinner discovered that pigeons rewarded on this unpredictable schedule pressed the lever far more obsessively than pigeons who were rewarded every single time. He called it a variable ratio reinforcement schedule. It is the same principle that makes slot machines so addictive. You don't know when the payout is coming, so you keep pulling. Your phone runs on the exact same schedule. Sometimes you check and there's nothing. Sometimes there's a message from someone you love. Sometimes it's a like, a comment, a small hit of social validation. You cannot predict which one it will be. That unpredictability is not a bug in the design. It is the entire design. But why does your brain care so much about social information specifically? Why does a notification about a comment feel more urgent than a reminder to drink water? The anthropologist Robin Dunbar has spent decades studying primate social structures. He found a consistent pattern. The larger the social group a primate species lives in, the larger its neocortex, the outer layer of the brain responsible for complex thought. Humans with our unusually large neocortex seem built to track relationships within a group of roughly 150 people. This is now called Dunbar's number. For nearly all of human history, tracking who liked you, who trusted you, who might betray you, was not idle gossip. It was survival information. Your ancestors lived and died by their standing within a small group. Being cast out did not mean loneliness. It meant almost certain death, alone, without protection or shared resources. That is why a notification about a comment on a photo can trigger the same neural circuitry that once tracked whether your tribe still valued you. Your brain cannot tell the difference between 150 real relationships on a savanna and thousands of digital acquaintances in your pocket. It just knows. Someone, somewhere might be talking about you. And it wants to check. So you have three ancient systems layered on top of each other, all firing at once every time your phone lights up. A dopamine system tuned to reward uncertainty rather than outcomes. A foraging instinct built for scanning an unpredictable environment. And a social tracking system that treats every notification like a tribal status update. None of these systems evolved with an off switch. They didn't need one. In the ancestral environment, information was slow and expensive. You couldn't check the tree line 1,000 times a minute. The world itself created natural limits. Walking to the riverbank took time. Waiting for news from a neighboring group took days. The hunger for information was always throttled by how hard information was to get. Your phone removed the throttle. It kept the hunger. Here's the twist that most people miss. The apps that seem to be fighting for your attention are not actually fighting against you. They are fighting against your ancestors. Every design choice, the red notification badge, the pull to refresh gesture that mimics a slot machine lever, the infinite scroll that never signals an end, was engineered by people who understood these systems explicitly. The technologist B.J. Fogg, who ran the Persuasive Technology Lab at Stanford, spent years researching exactly how small design cues can trigger automatic human behavior. Many of the engineers who built the apps on your home screen studied his work directly. They did not create a new desire in you. They found an old one that kept a hunter-gatherer alive for 100,000 years, and they built a machine that triggers it every few seconds instead of every few days. So what do you do with this? Not much, if the goal is to simply feel guilty about checking your phone. Guilt doesn't compete well against 100,000 years of neural wiring, but understanding does something guilt cannot. It gives you back a choice. The urge to check is not a personal failure. It is not evidence that you lack discipline. It is a foraging instinct, correctly identifying your phone as an unpredictable source of socially relevant information and doing exactly what it evolved to do. Recognizing that doesn't make the urge disappear, but it does turn an invisible compulsion into a visible mechanism, and mechanisms can be worked with. You can add friction back into the system the way the natural world once did. Turn off badges, leave the phone in another room. Batch your checking into a few deliberate windows instead of 100 reflexive ones. You are not fighting a character flaw. You are restoring a limit that evolution assumed would always be there. Think about the last time you picked up your phone without deciding to. There was no thought involved. Your hand simply moved. That is not weakness. That is roughly 100,000 years of ancestors who survived by paying close attention to their environment, expressing itself through a piece of glass and metal that didn't exist for more than 99.9% of human history. Your phone buzzes, you look, and somewhere behind that simple motion is a brain still scanning the tree line, still listening for the rustle in the grass, still checking to see if the tribe remembers you.